Welcome back to the BetCanada channel. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by Sean Barie of Fox 13. Thanks for joining me, Sean.
Oh, thank you for having me, Katie. Happy to be here on BetCanada.com.
Let's talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, the big news, Chris Godwin re-signs with the Bucs on a 3-year, $66 million deal, $44 million guaranteed. So, Sean, it sounds like he left a lot of money on the table. He wanted to stay in Tampa. So, was this a win for both sides? It must feel pretty good for the team heading into another season with Baker Mayfield having both Chris Godwin and Mike Evans.
Yeah, I mean, this was a win for both sides. And clearly, when you leave upwards of $20 million on the table, which is reportedly what the Patriots were offering, maybe that was it looked like a fourth year. That was kind of what he left on the table. Yeah, but clearly he's built a life here with his wife. They just had a baby. He has charities here. And this is nothing new for NFL players, but in my interactions with Chris Godwin over the past couple of years, you kind of get the sense that he's not all about the money. And I think he proved that with this deal. He really wanted to stay a Buccaneer. The Buccaneers really wanted him. It's Mike Evans. They've got a lot of young receivers. They've got Bucky Irving running out of the backfield. Like this is a team that is aging, but also has young guys ready to step up as well, as we saw. And you also have to remember that Chris Godwin is coming off a gruesome injury, a dislocated
Yes.
ankle, right? Week 7 against the Ravens. I was on the sidelines when that happened. And partly because the stadium was half empty because the Ravens were up by almost, I think, like 3 touchdowns at that
Yeah.
point. When he got injured, you could hear a pin drop. And I'll never forget, it's the famous image of him being carted off the field, and he's looking at the trainer and he just says, "Back to work." Because this is another
Ooh.
horrible injury that he sustained in his career. And both times, coming off season-ending injuries and surgeries, the Bucs re-signed him to a long-term deal. That says a lot, I think, about what they think about him as a player and as a person. So in the back of my mind, I'm like, I don't think he's leaving, but you never know
Yeah.
until they sign on the dotted line.
Money can talk, but also I wouldn't want to necessarily be playing for the Patriots this year either. So I get
Not
it.
right now. I mean, who doesn't want to play for Baker Mayfield, which is something I didn't think I'd be saying a few years ago.
Yeah, what year is this? Well, so on the other side of the ball, they add Hassan Reddick. This one was an interesting one for me. To me, it feels like it could be pretty low risk, high reward, but who knows what we're actually going to see from him this year? There was definitely quite a bit of drama surrounding him. What are your expectations for Reddick?
I think what the Bucs are expecting is an elite pass rusher to come down here to Tampa because they've been so desperate for that. The interior of their defensive line is so solid with Vita Vea, who's coming off of a Pro Bowl season. You have Kalijah Cansey, who has had some injury problems his first 2 seasons with the Bucs, but first round draft pick out of Pitt, and he's been kind of almost like an undersized Aaron Donald type guy. Like he's a really good interior pass rusher, run stopper. He has a super high ceiling, so they're waiting for him to develop more and complete a full season healthy too. So the interior of that line is solid, but they have had so many problems just trying to
Yeah.
find an edge rusher. And as we know in football right now in the NFL, a star edge rusher that usually means a defensive player of the year, at least
Yep.
talking about that. Your TJ Watts, your Michael Parsons, your Trey Hendricksons. We're talking about these guys. When Myles Garrett said, "I want out of Cleveland," there wasn't a soul down here that likes pewter and red that didn't think that the Bucs were going to throw their hat into the ring
Yep.
and try and trade for Myles Garrett. And I'm back here going, you've got more worries than just edge rusher to take care of. So maybe let's try and find a stopgap in, like you said, a low risk, high reward. And I think Hassan Reddick
Mhm.
fits the bill perfectly for that because, like you said, 1 year, 14 million. Last year, they went out and got Randy Gregory, signed him to that 1 year deal. The dude never showed up to OTAs, to minicamp, to training camp, nada. So he kind of, I guess, for lack of a better term, scammed the Bucs a little bit, played the system a little bit. I don't think he ever had any kind of intentions of coming to Tampa Bay. So we're left to deal with that. You had kind of a rotating cast on the outside. Yes, Yaya Diaby is he's a beast, but I think he kind of plateaued a little bit in his second year. I think they were expecting him to maybe take over as kind of one of those elite pass rushers because he had 6.5 sacks his rookie season. A third round pick, and you lead the team in sacks your rookie year. That's no ho hum, but
Mhm.
kind of plateaued a little bit. And then on the other side, you had a rotating cast of you had Logan Hall over there. You had Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, former first round pick, who just never lived up to the hype. You had Anthony Nelson, who they just re-signed to a 2 year deal, who as that kind of platoon guy. So they just can't seem to get it right. and hopefully they do with Hassan Reddick.
Well, and you mentioned the other issues that they have on this team. Last year, one of the biggest holes I saw for the Bucs was their depth in the secondary. So they made another signing today, bringing in Kindle Vildor. Are there still moves to be made? Because it feels like they could still use a lot more help here.
They could use depth was the biggest problem, but injuries also
Depth in it,
just. I
exactly.
mean, I don't know who the Bucks, ticked off last year, but the football gods were not kind to them, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Whether it was at corner because both Zion McCollum and Jamel Dean missed time. They like to have those, nickel safeties. Like they know what nobody was safe. It seems like every week I was talking to someone new or someone was coming into the locker room who was new that they were trying to plug in and play at that position. Practice squad guys they had cut, had gone to another teams, been cut there, and they brought back. Like it was just an ever rotating cast on defense. And what was the losing streak up to? I think they lost like 5 straight this season, last season,
Mm,
4 or 5 in a row. They were like 4-8 at one point. I'm like, this ain't going well. Or 4-7. I'm like, this isn't going well. And they finally got a little bit healthier. But yeah, depth, injury bug that played a
yeah.
role in that weird stretch last year. But yeah, there's still moves to be made because I wouldn't be surprised if they also tried to move on from Jamel Dean. They signed him to a contract a couple of years ago. He's also regressed just a little bit. Zion McCollum looks like he's a pretty decent corner, especially in this league. And they're trying to find someone to play opposite him. I don't think they're going to do it by platooning guys. Like Todd Bowles likes his guys on defense. So I wouldn't be surprised if they move on from Jamel Dean, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they, go and draft a corner
Hmm.
or some safeties. Like they need help.
And
They need depth.
any of the above, yeah. Where do you see the Bucks in the division this year? Because it feels like it's been getting a little spicier the last couple years.
I see him looking down on the other three in the division.
You still do? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's any change. I mean, yeah, there's still free agency to get through and the draft to get through, but there was all the hype about the Falcons last year. Oh, they went out and got Kirk Cousins. They're the division favorites. And even though the Bucks got so banged up, even though they had that losing streak at one point, like they still were in this thing. I mean, they were a touchdown away. They were a field goal away from forcing overtime. They were a touchdown
Mhm.
away from beating the Commanders, who wound up in the NFC Championship game. Like that's where this team is. They're still a good team. They just have, like you said, some holes to fill. I don't know what the Falcons are necessarily going to be next year.
No one does.
We'll see what Michael Penix is. I mean, he played well, and then he didn't play well. So, given a full season, is he going to provide the Falcons that extra oomph to catch the Bucks? Hard to say yes right now because I just don't know. The sample size is too small. The Panthers still have miles to go, and the Saints do as well. So the Saints and Panthers, in my mind, are non-factors. It's a two-horse race between the Falcons and Bucks, and I don't see the Falcons catching the Bucks right now.
The Panthers are the one that I think could be a little spicier than we
I,
expect this year. They
I
still might be a couple years out, but I think they're on their way up, which is kind of fun to see because it's been a minute for them.
And it all hinges on what Bryce Young can do. We saw him
Yeah.
get benched for Andy Dalton last year and then come back when Andy Dalton got injured. And boom, it's like, a switch was flipped. And maybe if he continues to progress, because it's not like he turned into Patrick Mahomes, even though he went wire to wire with Patrick Mahomes in that game in Carolina. But at the same time, like he needs to progress. And I mean, they still have a lot of roster to build up. But like I've said many times, I would play for Dave Canales because that guy is just a motivator of men.